Hey everyone, if you want to get into Melbourne High, Macrob, Nossal or Suzanne, Cory, then this is for you. Because today we're chatting to Diwash, who went through the process last year. He was successful in getting into Melbourne High. And we're going to be hearing a few tips for success from him, so welcome Diwash.
Okay, thanks for having me.
And so probably the best place to start is what actually interested you in Melbourne High and just selective schools in the first place?
Well, it was like a dinner, like a Christmas day, last day of Christmas in primary school, and me and my mates were just talking. Like, they were like pretty studious and like their parents were involved in that kind of stuff, and they were just talking to me about these selective schools, and I had no clue what they were, but like obviously I just like studying back then, like being academic and that. And they talked to me all about it. My parents didn't even know what it was then, and this was like grade 4 Christmas day. And then I just looked into it and I was like really fascinated, and ever since then I just went to pathways to try to maximize my chance, like scholarship in grade 6, and that's what really got me hooked in.
That's good. And I guess you chose Melbourne High in the end. What made you choose Melbourne High over the other ones?
Well, in private schools, there's like different social groups and that, and like not everyone's focused on the same goal, which kind of divert you from your path. So like, say you're involved in sports and academics, kind of hard to choose one. But in Melbourne High, everyone's focused on the same goal. It's like a kind of like a tight knit community, if I can say that. And everyone just really connected for that one goal, and like it really motivates you to do what you like. Yeah,
I agree. And personally for me, I found it surprising that when I went there, I thought everyone would be like super studious and not talking and just being a bit like, I don't know, let's go to the library at lunch and not do anything. But it seems like a normal school, but everyone just kind of does well. Is that kind of how you found it so far?
Yeah, definitely. That's like, I was really shocked when well, not really shocked, but I also had the same perception as like people who don't go to school. Like everyone would just kind of be like nerds, so to speak. And like they wouldn't really have anything other than like academics. Yeah. But if you really like go into the school, you'll see that Melbourne High is like pretty much any other private school, just academically very smart across the whole cohort, along with all the extracurriculars and like sports that may even be better than most schools. Yeah,
that's true. And I guess if we kind of go right back to when you first started preparing for Melbourne High, how did you feel right at the start of your preparation? Because obviously it's pretty difficult to get in. How did you feel about your chances of success?
Well, I'd say like I didn't really give much thought to it. Because I knew I was really far away, so obviously I'll do the basic preparation, but I didn't really care much about it until like it really came up, because that's when the realization really hit me that like I really want to get in this school, and I got to start preparing. But before that, it was maybe like 30 minutes a day, not much, and it wasn't very like planned out. I just want to study, just to study,
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess in terms of how you prepared, if you kind of had to summarize how you overall prepared for the exam, what would you kind of say? The high level.
If I could prepare for the exam again?
Yeah, I guess if you could prepare for the exam again,
If I could prepare for the exam again, I'd have a much better plan. Just plan out everything. I mean, your tutoring service already did that, like with the reverse flowchart method, I guess. And that really helped me. But if I could do it again, I'd have like very like organized systems like Notion, which I already did, but just having that more thought out and like scheduled, so knowing what you'll do by the hour, so that also gives you more time to study, and then that you get more time to have free time, so you don't burn out and you're actually having fun doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I guess that was one of the things that the students in our program this year wanted me to ask you, which is like, how much time did you spend studying per day? And like, what did you do in that time?
I always had that question when I was preparing, So I'd say from like September, which is when I started preparing, September to December, I was probably doing like, I wasn't studying every day. Maybe it was like 2-3 hours a week, and I was a bit lazy, I'd say, because I was just focused on other stuff. And then once January hit school holidays, that's when I really like focused. It was school holidays were like 4 to 6 hours a day. It was just my main focus the whole time. And then when school started, I kind of went in a slump just because I was getting adjusted coming up from school. I'm a morning guy, I'm not an evening guy. And I'd be kind of lazy to study after that. After that period, March to June, when the test date was, I was studying like a maniac. It was like 4 or 5 hours a day. Not on a school day. On a school day, it was more like 2-3. But what really set it apart was just that it was very strategic, and that really helped me a lot compared to others who would spend like 4 hours, 5 hours a day on a school day, and they wouldn't really have any direction, and they didn't get in.
How do you think yours was strategic? Because that's definitely one of the biggest things I noticed about you, in that some people, they would kind of do the work and they would, I don't know, like they would write 10 essays and they wouldn't really reflect much between them. And I'd read the first one and the 10th one and there's not much improvement. But with you, you were very, like you thought things through very well. Like, okay, I'm here, this is what I should do. What do you think you did in terms of being strategic that made the biggest difference?
Well, I remember this was around December. I shot you an email talking about like how can I manage my time effectively, and like if I should study like multiple things, multiple periods in one day, or focus on one session. And you told me just to focus on one category, like verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, like that per day. And that would be like 2 hours a day. So that, what really helped me, like the most significant thing in my strategic plan was focusing on one category per study block. So say morning 9 to 11 or 9 to 12 until you eat lunch. Just focus on that one specific category rather than like jumping on vocab to simple math questions to algebra, that stuff. Just focus on one, go deep dive into it, focus on one very minuscule thing so you master it for that study session, and then just repeat that, rinse and repeat.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like that's definitely the best way. It's so much easier when you can just focus on something properly rather than do all these different things at once. On that kind of note as well, where do you feel like most people go wrong in their preparation?
I mean, there's a bunch of factors, but I'd say the main one is just motivation. Not doing the work. Yeah. And it's also not having a plan. Yeah. So that's a lot of people who like study, they have the passion to study, but they don't have the right plan. Yeah. And then that really sets them way far back. Yeah. But then those people who do have a plan but just don't stick to the plan, that's another issue that's like really common with students. Yeah. Especially those who go to like the big tutoring club like James and they have a plan set out from them from like those companies, but then they don't stick to the plan, like they don't have motivation. That's why it's really important to set those goals so you know what you're going to do.
Yeah, I agree. Because from looking at all the people who got in last year, all the students with the motivation and the drive who are like willing to do the work, their chance of getting in compared to people who are just like, oh, I don't really care, like I'll just do whatever you say, but I'm not that into it, was like significantly more, which is interesting. And it kind of just shows like if you do the work on like a daily basis and a weekly basis, it does lead to like the long-term results which you want, which is good.
Yeah, 100%.
I guess if we look at on the exam day for you, how did you go in the end for each section, and how did that compare to when you like walked out of the exam, or how you felt for each section?
That was a roller coaster, I can't lie. Start off with reading, that was first. Yeah. Reading actually wasn't that hard. It was like pretty much what I expected. I'd say out of a scale of 10, it was probably like, for my standards, it was probably like a 5, like right in the middle. But in like totally, it was probably like a 6 or 7. You know, so it wasn't super hard, but it was pretty strike bang in the middle. Yeah. So I thought I did well on that, but the only concern I had with that is that since it was pretty easy, I was concerned that my score wouldn't be high enough to hit that superior top 10% mark. Yeah. So I was a little doubtful about that, but overall I think I did well for myself. Yeah. Then we jumped into maths. Maths was, in my opinion, it was like really hard. It was the only section I didn't get a superior on. Yeah. And it's because I guessed a bunch of questions. So probably guessed from like question 26 with like 5 minutes left to like 35. Yeah. And yeah, that was the one I was like most doubtful on because everyone else was saying it was easy. Yeah. It wasn't that hard. And for me, it was like really hard. Yeah. But I still ended up getting really good score for that. Yeah. And then we went into verbal reasoning, which was actually really nice because it was a bunch of vocab questions like at the end, which I'm pretty much aced because a big thing in my preparation was just vocab. Yeah. And then there was one specific question type that came up like repeatedly, which I didn't have much preparation for. Although I think I do have more preparation than the average students for that question, which is what helped me get a superior. And then we jumped into quantitative reasoning. Yeah. Quantitative reasoning was probably harder than maths for me and for everyone. Yeah. It was probably the hardest section. A bunch of abstract questions, like AMC type questions. Yeah. Which was just really, really difficult, and kind of you had to guess a lot of these questions, and if you didn't, they'll take up all your time. Then we had writing. Writing was definitely my strongest suit. I was very, very confident that I'd get a superior in them because I just done so much strategic preparation for that. And yeah, so after I came out of the exam, it was kind of, I had no idea if I'd get it. Like I was confident I'd either get like 3 or 4 superiors, and like ace everything, or like 4 below averages. Like it was like I couldn't decide between the two. Yeah, and I guess now that you've got into Melbourne High, what kind of scores do you think from like all the people around you would you need to get in? Like, would you say 3 superiors you should aim for, or 4? Or? Obviously it depends on what school you're going to. Yeah. I don't think the school you go to is as big of a deal as people make it out to see. Yeah. It's very trivial. Yeah. Your preparation and hard work will be 100 times more important than that. So I would say minimum 2, but then you're looking at a fairly low chance. Yeah. But then if you're going 3, you're at like a 60, 70, 80% chance. Yeah. And then 4, and then a good score or like an average score. I know people who got 4 superiors, 1 below average, and I know a bunch of people who got that and they got in. So 4 pretty much sets you for success, guaranteed. 3 is basically the middle bar, which is what you want to aim for.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I think 3 is like a good amount to aim for. Most people, I think from all the people we had, there's only 2 people who got 3 and didn't get in, which is a bit unfortunate for them, because if you get such a high score, you wish you get in. But I agree, 4 if you aim for that, even if you get a below average. Like I got a below average in one of my sections and still got in. So I think, definitely agree with that. If we kind of go through each section of the exams, like we start with writing, a lot of people wanted to know how you actually studied for writing, because it's one of those sections where it can seem harder to know what to do. Like obviously you can do writing, but like how do you feel like you improve the most in your preparation?
So now we're in about March. So if I was started from my preparation from now, I'd probably be doing at minimum one essay for each type per week.
Yeah,
that would really set you up. But then that won't really do anything if you don't get your feedback and actually work on that. So what I'll do is I'll get feedback from you and other people, and then I'll create like a kind of document saying like what I need to do better, what I did good, what I should repeat, stuff like that. And I'll write down a document really I'll spend an hour, maybe even 2 hours on this, so it would really be ingrained in my head. And next time I did an essay, I would really focus on what I did wrong, what I did good, and repeat that. And even if the score was very, very minuscule, even if it was the same, I know that there was a very minuscule difference that eventually will compound to superior.
Yeah, that's true. Because particularly with writing, like you won't necessarily improve right away, but if you are practicing over the course of a few weeks or a month, the score will definitely go up. If we look at writing, like the main areas people get stuck for persuasive or like the discussion writing is probably like argument strength. Like their arguments aren't, we keep saying the arguments aren't strong enough. What did you do to get your arguments strong? Because yours were good.
I'd say in about May, something that was said, I think it was by you or another tutor in your program, it was said you really have to deep dive into why. Like keep asking yourself why. When you're writing, say why is this important, why is this important, and just keep delving into that why. So you have your topic sentence, then you elaborate, and then you have your point, and your point you just have to say why does the point matter, and then say it's like people should pick up their dog's poop, why should they do that, and it's cleaner for the environment. Why does the environment matter? And you have to keep going and going, and that will eventually when you get good at the skill, you'll see that like you have too much right, and it just acts like a blessing in disguise,
That's true.
And then you just have amazing argument strength after that.
That's true, because that's actually a good tip, because it makes sure the argument's strong, but also makes sure that it's like developed well and it's explained well, because you have all that reasoning. Because otherwise a lot of people often say like the first why and then cut it there. It just feels a bit like, but so what, somewhat.
That's with the majority. That's what I had that big problem, and that's what's keeping me from like in a high average, above average. And once I made that leap, it was a leap to superior. That's
basically the one thing where if people can go from, if they can get past that, then they're set, really.
Definitely.
What about for narrative writing? For narrative writing, I'd say it's probably like not being descriptive enough. Or being way too descriptive and just it doesn't make any sense. How did you kind of find that? Like
people think that their descriptiveness just isn't good, their writing skills aren't good. I think that mainly stems from their creativity and making sure you have a good plot idea. Because if you have a good plot idea, I remember you always mentioned that it should be simple but like interesting, And if you have a good plot idea, then that really enables you to write in a descriptive and effective way. But just for description itself, what I would do is I started off a very bad like writer. I couldn't describe anything for my life. And so what I'll do is I'll go in some AI like ChatGPT, Gemini. Gemini was my personal favourite. It's like write in a human manner. And then I'll just put in a bunch of sentences. I'll say, give me simple sentences, and then give me 10 simple sentences, let me write on them to make it more descriptive paragraphs. And then after I wrote those paragraphs, I'd send it in and I'll say, show me an example and what can I prove to make mine more descriptive. And then I'll model my responses after those descriptions.
That's really good, because the good thing about descriptive writing is it's a skill you can just practice on its own. Like if you can take a sentence like I was tired and make it way more descriptive, like so that someone feels like they're transported and they can see this tired person sitting on the couch. You can practice that on its own, and then when you go to write in 20 minutes, it makes it so much easier. On writing as well, one thing a lot of people ask is like, should you just practice writing in only 20 minutes and never longer? Or should you spend time, for example, like writing a really good piece and getting used to what's happening?
Definitely. That is what really helped me. So, especially when you're starting, so this would be months before us. Just starting off, make sure you have a really good foundation. But then from now, I would say most of your practice, 80 to 90% should be time under pressure, because we don't have much time left. But I would still say it's good to not only do your feedback, but to do those really good pieces. I remember you stressed out a lot last year, and it really helped me just doing like 30, 40, 50, 1 hour pieces, just focusing on getting everything right, especially on the feedback. And doing that would just help you tons and tons, because once you get back into that time strategy, you'll remember that and it'll be engaged. So you can just get superior for that.
Yeah, I agree. Because that's what someone told me when I was in year 12. Like, if you can't write a really good piece in 10 hours, there's no way you're going to be able to do it in 1 hour.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing with this. Like, if you can't write a good piece in an hour, then there's like no chance at all you're going to write in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is good. So, I think that's good tips for writing. If we go on to verbal reasoning, it's like obviously some of that section was like pretty similar. Some of it was a little bit different than what you would expect. Maybe if we start with like what was similar, so like the vocab questions. What were the main questions that you thought were similar than what you were expecting?
So we had vocab, but it's not like the vocab you would think of. It was in very specific types, like analogy kind of vocabs, but not analogies. It would be the vocab in a sentence, and then you'd have to define it. And that really made it tricky. So even if you knew what the word meant, or the option would be kind of deceiving, because like one option would be one that fits the sentence, but isn't like kind of like the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
And then the second option would be the meaning of the word, but doesn't really fit the sentence.
Yeah.
That would be like really tricky on the part. And the main technique for that is first knowing how to deal with that, but secondly, even if you don't know how to deal with that, it's only 1 mark. So if it takes too long, just skip it, especially with 30 seconds per question.
Yeah.
And then the second question type would be the argument analysis ones, where you have to discuss the argument strength of one like line. It would be like something about people should pick up their dog's feces, and then it would have a bunch of options that would describe if this argument was like relevant or not, and then you have to pick the one that was least relevant, and that least section made it really tricky. There'll be some that were like pretty strong, but are they the least? And then there's some that you can't even understand what it means.
Yeah.
That just made it really tricky, but trying to speedrun it and going through it all like in those 30 seconds would just my biggest tip is just to not think too much about it. Let your instincts and preparation just deep dive into it.
Yeah. I definitely agree with those argument evaluation ones. The way it's worded where the least relevant, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around what that actually means, and that makes it quite a lot harder. It's interesting as well, that question appears on like so many other aptitude tests, like UCAT, that style of question, selective school tests in other states. So my guess is it's probably going to be on the exam again. Because like, what did you say, was it like sort of 10, 15 marks or more last year?
Yeah, definitely. I would say at least 10 marks.
Yeah.
Maybe upwards of 20. Somewhere around there. But I remember at the very start, every like second or third question would just be one of those. Yeah. It was kind of annoying. Yeah. Every time I'd finish a vocab question, pretty easy, go into the argument analysis, and I'd spend like 2 minutes on that. But then it just made me realise like, it's only 1 mark, just got to skip it if you can't do it.
Yeah, that's true. And so I guess that's verbal reasoning. Any other tips for verbal?
Verbal, make sure your vocab's down.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part about vocab.
Yeah.
About verbal. If your vocab's really good, then you're set for at least a high average minimum.
Yeah.
Then after that, when your preparation, go for the minuscule topics. Make sure you mastered each one. So you don't know, maybe next year like 20 analogy questions can go on.
Yeah.
So like even last year only 2 came up, but you should always be prepared for like analogy, unjumbling, stuff like that. Just be prepared, master each one.
Yeah.
And then that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Was there unscrambling or unjumbling ones last year?
Yeah, there was. I can't remember the exact type of question was, but it had the main element of 1 or 2 questions were just unjumbling. Yeah,
that makes sense. And I guess last thing for verbal, like it is the section where you've got 60 questions in like 30 minutes. How do you find for time? Like, were you stressed for time?
Time, not at all. I mean, in the exam, I remember I had 10 minutes left with 20 questions to go. Yeah. That's because all the prior questions had just been the argument analysis ones. And then, so what I did is, I was on question 40, 10 minutes left. So I skipped to question 60 just to see all the discussion. Yeah. And I saw 60, like 50 to 60, all vocab. Yeah. And those vocab weren't even that tricky. And I knew like at least 90% of the words there. Yeah. So I just breezed through those in 2 minutes. And then I had 8 minutes to do like 10 questions, which was really easy. So I breezed through all that. And then I finished with like a minute left. So time was never an issue for me. I mean, at the very start of your preparation, it will seem like the biggest issue, like, oh my god, how do people do this? And like 30 seconds, one question is impossible. Yeah. And then once you actually start practicing, you know the questions and master them. Yeah. It's really not an issue. It's like the least of your issues. Yeah, I agree. Once you've done that same question type so many times, the timing definitely does go down heaps in terms of how long it takes. If we jump on to, maybe we'll do quantitative because that was a bit of a tricky one. How did you kind of find it on the exam? Well, I can't lie, I remember the least about quantitative just because it's so hard. I was just too focused on like how hard these questions were. Yeah. That's a big thing about, it's a good point I brought up that you may be hit, probably will be hit with like a really, really hard test. Yeah. And in the case that does happen, Don't stress your mind with it. Oh my days, this is like so hard. Keep focused on the thing. Take some deep breaths if you can. Because if you plague your mind with stuff like negative comments, it's just gonna ultimately ruin your exam score.
Yeah.
And then in terms for the actual quantitative questions, I would say really get your abstract question reasoning down.
Yeah.
Because this far in your preparation, you should be comfortable and pretty much mastered all the simple question types.
Yeah.
Like arithmetic and that.
Yeah.
But right now, from now on, you should really just be focusing on those AMC type questions. So
Yeah.
AMC practice steps, you can find a heap of them online if you look properly. Getting those abstract question types down, understanding what they are and how to do them.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think when you say the abstract question types, would you say that includes, let's say, like number patterns, maybe like the spatial reasoning ones where you have to like manipulate things around?
Yeah, definitely. Number pattern more of like the basic ones.
Yeah.
But they can also come up in like abstract one.
Yeah.
Like a big thing that just reminded me about is like all these questions were mixed. So you wouldn't have just one question type.
Yeah.
On like one question, it would be like maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 questions that are mixed in one question.
Yeah.
That's the biggest key factor that made it like abstract.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if you gave me those questions again, like 10 minutes to do one question, I'd really see like the arithmetic, the logical reasoning behind it. But in those like 40 seconds you get it's just abstract. It's like kind of like trial and error in your mind instead of like 2 + 2 is 4. But if you gave those questions again to me, we would be able to see like it's really just pretty simple.
Yeah.
There's logical reasoning, but
Yeah.
in the test day, it's very abstract.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the things we spoke about in class. I kind of asked, like, do people think there'll be any questions that they haven't seen before on the exam? And like a lot of people said, yeah, there's probably going to be like a lot of surprises. But some people said, no, I think I would have seen everything before. But I think we saw last year, like there's definitely going to be, almost every year, there's going to be a lot of surprises on the exam. Like with quantitative reasoning last year was pretty different to what people would have expected. How do you reckon, what's the best thing to do to navigate that uncertainty of like when you see a question and you think, oh, this is like super hard, I've never seen this before. How did you kind of handle that?
Well, first thing says, from now on, with ACE doing the exam, I'm 90% sure that you will find questions, almost half of your questions that you've never seen before. Obviously, you've seen elements and you're familiar with elements in that, but the question or question type itself you've never seen before, so you really have to know how to tackle that. And in terms of tackling with that, first things first, as I mentioned before, just not to overwhelm yourself with those comments, because that would just fatigue you and make you do worse. Then after that is understanding if this is within your range. Can you do this in the 40-50 seconds you get?
Yeah.
You can't skip it. Don't even waste like 20 seconds on it because you won't get it.
Yeah.
And then if it is within your range, just try to find the simplest way around it. Don't rush into the question, and that's pretty much it. Yeah,
that makes sense. I would definitely agree with that. Because probably the other thing is like, for example, for quantitative or for maths, would you say that the hard questions, were they testing like some super hard like year 10 or 11 concept, or was it more just that it was phrased in a way where it was just super hard to know like what on earth it was even assessing?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, ACER outlines it. They only test like grade 8, 9 content.
Yeah.
But what they really mean by that is like, many students are deceived into thinking that it's just grade 8 textbook. I'll study grade 8, 9, maybe even 9 textbook, I'll be fine, 100% on every test.
Yeah.
That's definitely not it. It's grade 8, 9 concepts, so like when you go for the index, you'll see finance did appear, like algebra.
Yeah.
But grade 8 algebra, it's just the content, like the word itself algebra, but then the actual content, the type of questions that came up, maybe even 10, 11 level. So don't be fooled into thinking that the actual context will be the level of grade 8 or 9. It will definitely be harder than that. But in terms of the actual question, the elements are definitely grade 8 and 9. But the level you have to conceptualize it, I guess, would definitely be of higher intellect, like grade 10 and 11.
Yeah, I agree. Because that's the same thing we've seen with our homework. Like at the start, we're just kind of building basic building blocks. We just had, for example, basic geometry questions, let's say. And people were getting like 90, 95% all the time. Yeah. Then we changed them to be more like the AMC style, like super thinking based questions. And it's like, it literally tests the same difficulty of like if you're good at the algebra at year 8 level, you're going to be able to, you have the skills to answer those questions, but the average score on the homework dropped to like 50% right away, just because it's so hard to know what to do. So it is interesting how it could be testing the same, like you might need the same skill, but it's just so much harder when it's phrased in that way, which is interesting. Yeah, but I would say the best way, because obviously now a lot of students are worried that they'll find questions which they'll just be dazzled by and they won't know what to do. Yeah. But I would say the best way to prepare for that is to expose yourself to as many question types as you can. Because obviously you won't you probably won't see those questions again,
But the fact that you're seeing new question types, something you've never done before, like elements you've seen, but the actual question you've never seen before.
Yeah.
It doesn't really test like your mathematical skills, English skills, but what it does test is like your ability to approach it, how you approach it. So that's the biggest thing. Because once you've done with one question type, you're going to see another question type, and then you'll practice that skill of dealing with questions you've never seen before. So that's the number one tip I have for dealing with these questions you might not know.
Yeah, that's true. Because it does, like, doing that builds your problem solving skills, which is actually what they're assessing, really. That's why they change it up, because they want to find people who have really good problem solving skills. I guess if we go to maths, so maths was maybe slightly easier than quantitative, but still not the easiest. How did you find maths?
I would say maths was pretty similar to quantitative in types of reasoning.
Yeah.
But maths was definitely a lot more logical in terms of like arithmetic and that kind of stuff. It was just a bit time consuming, I'd say. Like the actual question looked simple, but once you actually delved into it, it was pretty time consuming in terms of like the actual arithmetic and that in it. Not as much of analytical thinking and problem solving, but definitely just more questions where you first have to actually think about it like quantitative, and then once you actually understand what it's saying, it's actually pretty simple from there. So I mean, most students went wrong, including me. It's just not being able to understand what the question meant at first.
Yeah. For maths or for quantitative?
For maths, definitely.
For maths, yeah. And I guess what were the major topics do you think that came up in maths?
Angles, definitely.
Yeah.
Maths, as I said, maths and quantitative were pretty similar, so these go for both. Angles, arithmetic, that's with all questions. Algebra was pretty hidden. And as I said, all these elements, like if I say angles, algebra, I mean that they're all combined in one question. Don't expect that you'll have one question isolated for angles. That would be very rare. We'll all be mixed up. So algebra, angles, arithmetic, that's the biggest feat from last year. But beware that it might change next year. Probably will.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like really the safest thing is just all year 7, 8, maybe even quite a bit of year 9 stuff if you're confident with it. You'll have the base skills to be able to do those things. How did you study for maths, and like what do you think worked well for you?
Well, coming in from primary school, maths was a strong suit. And when I really studied for selective, it was actually a weak part for me because it was just more like analytical thinking. Even like James Allen, that it was way more analytical than like just logical working out on paper. But then I eventually got it to a good level. What I did to get to that is just really isolate each question type, make sure like I mastered it, make sure everything's well. Like, if I see this question again, there's no chance of getting it wrong. I'm doing that for every single question type, and then working through it, doing a bunch of practice. And then number one thing is getting feedback on what you're doing wrong. Yeah,
that's true. And I guess final section is reading. So reading there's probably a few surprises like cartoons, maybe a few more poems. How did you find reading overall? I know you said it was easier.
When I say it's easier, don't be fooled into thinking it was like a walk in the park. It's definitely not. I finished with like 30 seconds now. Oh gosh, the end. When you have 5 questions left with like 5 minutes, even though that's the basic time limit, like your mind is stressing you out. It's like a selective school test. Like you might not get in your dream school, you know. But in terms of the actual questions, I would say when I saw cartoons, poems, a lot of graphs, which like no, I don't think anyone expected graphs, you know. But just dealing with those, I mean, reading all tests like integral skills, you know. So poems might test the same skill as like a long passage, or cartoons may test the same skills as graphs. So getting those skills down, understanding it, obviously your tutoring would teach the students like those skills, so they already have it down. But for others, understanding like what is deeply tested, and getting good at those will make sure that you're prepared for a wide variety, whatever comes up in reading.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess for poetry in particular, that's probably one where most people don't like it. How did you go about getting good at poetry?
So at the first I was terrible, probably like everyone else. So if you gave me a poem test of like 30 questions, I'll probably get like 15% on it. But then what really helped me is first I'd start with simple poems, always start from easy to harder. And in those simple poems, you might find it easy, great. If you don't, then just when you read each line in your head, like try like translate it into your simple English. That's what I still do to this day. If I'm reading a classic literature book and I don't understand the words, I'll just every time I read a new sentence, I'll try to translate the meaning into my own simple English, so like I can understand it. And after every paragraph for poems, I forgot what it's called, but after that, just try to like understand the meaning of it, what is the author trying to say. And if you're still struggling with that, is what I'll do, go back into the AI chatbots, put the poems in there. I definitely did this because I was terrible, and ask them what is it trying to say. Once you get once you've mastered that, like you actually understand poems,
Yeah.
understand the author's hidden intent. Because when you understand their intent, like the backstory of the poem, that's when you start getting all the questions for poems.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's the thing where if you can get to that level, then you're pretty set with poetry, really. I guess with poetry as well, what kind of questions came up? Was it more sort of like, I guess what kind of questions did you feel came up?
Well, there was two types of poems,
Yeah.
There's always two types, in my opinion. The first one more direct, like the author is literally telling you what's happening.
Yeah.
One poem did come out with that. It was Tattoo by Ted Kusa.
Yeah.
It was pretty direct. It wasn't that hard to understand. Another one was like a bed poem, very abstract. Couldn't really tell what the author, even though I was pretty advanced poet back then, and I could barely tell what the author were trying to say in that.
Yeah.
But for the first one, the more direct ones, it's try to find the author's like intent on what the characters are doing, like what the author's foreshadowing, elements like that. And once you understand, like main things about understanding it, like everything about it, not just what it's like it's saying on the text, but what the author means by this and what he's implying.
Yeah.
Then you'll get all the questions after that, most of them, and don't hesitate on options, because poems is something that wastes a bunch of time for new students, because they just hesitate on very specific questions. Even though I fell for that trap for like maybe one of the questions, to this day I still will. And then for the second one, more abstract ones, just try to trust yourself. Like you may think, I definitely had this doubt a lot, is when reading the abstract poems, I'd have this idea in my head, maybe it's talking about this, and then I'll kind of doubt myself on, like saying, this is probably too far of a reach, but trust your guts on what you're thinking, because it's probably right at the end of the day, and just go with that to answer the questions.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, because otherwise it's very easy to waste heaps of time in the reading comprehension section if you find like a poem or a passage that is hard to understand. Yeah. So it is good to just be like disciplined with time and make sure you don't waste too much time with it. Now we had a few questions from students in the program which they wanted me to ask. One of them is like, how do you deal with stress?
Stress. Well, you have stress in preparing.
Yeah.
I'd always been studying. Like, I'd always been a studious person, so that wasn't a big issue for me. But I'd say if it is, make sure you have a routine. That's the biggest thing. This goes beyond just studying. It's like more life skills in general, like self-improvement.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a routine from when you wake up, 6, 7 a.m. to when you sleep 9, 10. Make sure you have a good sleep schedule. Sleep at the same time every day.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sound like an old head, but like, this stuff actually works. I did it, and how do you get it? Then you can do the extras, which really hard. Meditating. Yeah. I mean, that stuff's really hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard, even for me, it's hard to keep consistent.
Yeah.
Meditating, journaling, that stuff. Don't focus too much on the study when you're not studying. Like if you're out with your friends, don't think about studying. Don't check your emails, stuff like that. Just when you're resting, rest. When you're studying, actually focus on it.
Yeah.
You don't want to get the two mixed up. And then the biggest thing for me and for a lot of other people is just exam preparation. Like what you do on exam month, exam week, exam day. Because I know people who when we were doing mock exams, I would be getting like 20 out of 50, and they would be getting like 45. Yeah. And then when we went in the in-person mock exam, they would do absolutely like still pretty good, but not as good as me, even though that was flashing me like the online mock exam. And I knew they weren't cheating or anything like that. So what really set me apart from them is exam month. Exam month, I would say go about your usual preparation, but don't study as much. Say you're studying 6 hours, 3 to 6 hours. Limit that to like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It's more consolidated, not learning. If you're still learning, try to put an end to that and consolidate, revise, and do as little learning as possible. Make sure everything's stuck in your head, and also the AMC problems, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then come exam week, for say day 7, so 7 days from the exam, that's when you start to. Maybe you can even do this 2 weeks if you have a big strong strike. You do it 2-3 weeks before. Yeah. Just start to limit how much you study. So say for me I start from day 7. Be like 3 hours, the next day 2 hours, the next day 1 hour. Yeah. But depending on how much you stress about it, maybe do a bit earlier. And then so day before, most important thing, don't study at all. Say you come home from school, maybe go out with friends. I mean, don't eat junk food. That's pretty self-explanatory. Yeah. Like play some sports. Like the day before, I had a basketball competition. Yeah. And that was like really fun, and it really set my mind apart from it. Yeah. So yeah, get your sleeping right. Just don't think about it the day before, and then the day that the exam comes, forgot to mention this, for the whole week, or I'll try to do it for the whole month, it would be best. Make sure you have a set in stone sleep schedule. For me, I actually calculate, this might be a bit nerdy, but I calculated a month in before, like what time I have to wake up and what time I have to leave the house. So what I do is I'd set my sleep schedule. I think I slept at about 9:50, 9:30, and I wake up at 6:30 around there. And I did that for a month so that on exam day I wouldn't be tired when I wake up. Woke up, and I'd also had the exact same breakfast for about 2 weeks before. I'd like 5 or 6 eggs, and the exact same ratio of nuts. Just like every day when I'd come out from breakfast, I'd like feel energetic and refreshed. So yeah, I feel like a bunch of people that their sleep schedules were altered, especially the week on it, because like maybe they had to wake up at like 4, not 4, like maybe 5 or 6, when they would be waking up like 8 or 9 before that. So make sure you have a good sleep schedule, so that when you wake up on the exam, you're energized and fresh. Now we're back to exam day. Exam day, I'll meditate. Even if you haven't done it before, just really focus your breath, trying to make sure you're focused. Do that cold shower when I woke up. Meditate, journal, and then eat a healthy breakfast, energetic breakfast. And then like when you're in the car, your parents are driving you there. Just don't think about it, right? The more you think about it, the more your mind just naturally stresses about it. Don't do that. Read a book, just whatever. Like don't scroll on TikTok, you know. But, like just talk to your parents, do stuff like that. And then I'd have like a specific breathing thing. Like I found this out by like Andrew Huberman. Like when you like breathe one in, like, and then you would go like, I can't do that because my nose is a bit stuffy. But like you breathe one in, you try to do it to your max, and once you finish with that, go up and just try to do one more after that, and breathe out like slowly. I actually helped me a lot. I just spammed that. But like I went into the test room, and I was sitting in the thinker. There was like 20 minutes to the exam, and I was just looking at all the kids beside me, and so I just keep doing that so it wouldn't stress me out. I look down and stuff, and when you're on test day, say hypothetically the first 2 exams really really hard. Now it's your break time. I think this is the longest break, about like 10-15 minutes. I was lucky because I was the celebrity room, so everything around me was pretty nice. But I know others were like more unfortunate. Go outside, like talk to your friends, but do not talk about like if you got this question right, if you got this question right. Because if you find out that like you got this question right, wrong, you got to think it's the end of the world. And then when you do the next one, you're just going to think about that. I mean, if the test was hard, talk about like how hard the test was. That'll give you some connection, you know. And so go to the toilet. Make sure you don't do overtime. Don't have like people hassling you because that'll just stress you out. And your last 2 should be pretty set for that. If you're stressed, just try to do the breathing thing, and you end the exam. Probably have some hard thoughts after that. Just talk to other people about it, see how you're doing, and just live your life after that. You know. Yeah,
I think that's really good advice. One thing that they wanted to ask around that as well is how did you deal with like the length of the exam? It is pretty long, and writing's right at the end. Like, did you get tired in it?
Definitely not. Again, this might sound a little nerdy, but for like all my preparation, I was always doing study blocks of like. So I know you would have like your tree service would have like full mock exams, like Easter mock exams, stuff like that. And you would say to do 1 test every like day or something like that for the whole week. But I'll do because I knew eventually I'd have to sit a 4-hour mock exam. Like I wasn't cut out to do that. So it started around January, December, school holiday. Every time there's a new mock exam, I'll do that in 1 full setting. And I'd plan it out exactly how the real exam went. So reading first, then thing, and then the break. So I'll just go around, walk out, and then I'll come back when the break finished. I'll do that. I kept every time there's a new mock exam to do, I'll just keep doing that. I'd say if you're not in a tutoring service, then compile your own mock exams. Make sure it's structured and planned. And just do that. Try to do that yourself. It's a bit hard, I know that, but try to do your best. And I'd also have like another laptop on the side playing like coughing sounds or like exam room music.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so like, cause I knew once like, there was like a baby crying on my test, and in James and these people would breathe heavy, and it would piss me off so much. So like, I knew I had to deal with that in case that did happen. Luckily, it didn't. So I'd have like really just like a bit disturbing music or like exam room sounds, so it wouldn't like put me off on the exam day. I would keep doing that. So the 4 hours like felt like nothing. It was like deep work flow for me. It would just go by really fast. I think, especially now, we have like 3 months left. If you just keep doing that, every time you have a new mock exam, you just keep doing that same schedule as the actual exam. You'll be pretty set, and 4 hours don't feel like nothing to people who just have it all messed up for them. Yeah,
I agree, and particularly you have the adrenaline on the day where if you're practicing beforehand, you're gonna have no problems with it. Last question is, what's it actually like being at Melbourne High, and is it similar to what you expected or different?
I mean, it's great, Melbourne High. You know, the community is great. Everyone's focused on the same goal. You know, people are very good at sports there. You know, there's student run stuff. SRC, that's amazing. Student Representative Council. It's a very student run school. I mean, there is government, which is like one drawback compared to private schools because they have more leverage to do what they want. But other than that, everything's great. I would say Selective School is basically just like a fairly elite private school, just for cheap. But I would say, in my opinion, it's better. Just because everyone's focused on single. You're not split into sport, into academics and music, stuff like that. Melbourne High, everyone's connected. You know, people will still be invested in sport, music, that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're here because of your academics. And student run, as I said, that's very nice. And just the main thing that you really, really love is just the community. That's like number one thing there.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that's definitely the number one thing. Even like now, like all the people I work with, went to Melbourne High, for example. So it is nice that it continues like that. Last question before we wrap up: what would be your like number one last tip for someone who's just sitting the exam? They've got an exam in about 3 months.
I don't want to say just have a plan, because that's basic. But really prepare on that exam month, exam week, exam day. Because I think if I didn't do that, I'd probably get a 1 or 2 submit. But if you're prepared on exam week, exam month, exam day, say everything I did, do your own extra research for that. You could go from like having 2 supers online or in person day to getting like 4 or 5, because it just really, really sets you apart. Because 1 or 2 questions, say your mind's not focused on those 1 or 2 questions, that can set you apart from above average to superior. So that's the biggest thing I have. Other than having a plan, which is just obvious. That's true. Well, that's a great tip. Great finish there, Diwash. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the session. Definitely a lot more than I thought we could pack into a quick interview. So thanks for joining us, Diwash. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.